Hello, this is the Joy Workshop. It's class number 3, and the subject today is illusion, then delusion. So, why is that the subject? Because we have been talking about happiness and joy and fulfillment, contentment, serenity. And one of the obstacles we have to reach this serenity, this inner contentment, this equanimity is not perceiving reality. So this is reality, here is illusion, and then here is delusion. So the problem with illusion is that it's not connected to reality. Now, I've been talking about positivity and being optimistic and creating a different story. So there's one thing is to be optimistic or pessimistic, but we're still connected to reality. And then another thing is to live in a fantasy world and to not see reality for what it is. And so we think that if we only could be in a certain situation and then we fantasize it, then it would be perfect and everything would be wonderful. Then I will give you a real example of why that is not true. People who win the lottery, when they win the lottery, there's a lot of research. An hour after they win the lottery, they start sobbing because of the bicycle they didn't have when they were children, and all the scarcity and lack that they suffered, blah, blah, blah. And then very shortly after they get all this money that's free, that's just given to them, they overspend it, they don't know how to manage it, they buy things that are high to maintain, like yachts or Porsches or big mansions, and they're extremely generous and they give money away, and then within a very short period of time they're broke. So when we get what we want, we stop dreaming and we wake up and then we make our dreams come true, but reality is different than dreams. And so that's why it's better not to be illusioned, because if we are illusioned, then we will be delusioned. We will be upset, we'll be disappointed. And so it is important to also make a difference between being optimistic, I told you already, and then there's a higher level of illusion, which is hallucination. So there are certain circumstances that are real mental disorders, like paranoia, believing that someone is following you, or grandeur, believing that you're beyond and everybody else and you're superior, or Brad Pitt is in love with you. Jealousy can also reach a point of a disorder, and there could be homicide involved. And there's somatizing things. So we have a distress, we have a worry, we have this anxiety, and we somatize it and our body gets sick, like being a hypochondriac. And so this can go to such an extreme that people who have split personalities, there was this case of one woman who argued that one of her personalities had diabetes. And when she was in that personality, she had a blood test done and she had diabetes. And when she was out of that, she was okay. And so that's how crazy we can get. Anyway, so now I want to talk about a little example, and it is just a little story. It's a movie, but it's based on Faust, that was written in 1808 by Goethe, the German writer. And the original story, Faust, is about an intellectual who wants to know everything, and he sells his soul to the devil. There is a movie that came out in 2000. It's called Bedazzled, and it's with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley, and it's the same story, but with a romantic twist. And so the devil tells Brendan Fraser, who is obsessed with this woman who works in his office, her name is Allison, and the devil grants Brendan Fraser 7 wishes. And so the first wish he will just waste on a hamburger and a Coke. Then the second wish, he thinks, I want to be rich, I want to be powerful, and I want to be married to Allison. And the devil does say, I cannot make Allison fall in love with you. That's the only thing I cannot give you, like in the fairy tales. And so he ends up being a Colombian drug dealer, and he gets shot very briefly. So the third wish is he wants to be emotionally connected to Allison. He wants to understand her, be sensitive, and he's too sensitive and she's not interested in him because he's too feminine. Then he wants to be an athlete, he wants to be strong, he wants to be powerful, he wants to be famous, he wants to be wealthy, and he forgot to ask to be smart, and he is turned into an athlete, and he's not very smart, and Allison is not interested. Then he figures it out and he says, I know, I want to be intelligent, I want to know everything about everything, I want to be sophisticated, chic, wealthy, have exquisite taste, and he turns out to be gay. And then finally he says, I got it. I want to ask something transcendental. I want to make the world a better place. I want to be a president that makes a difference. And the devil is tricky, and she turns him into Abraham Lincoln, and he gets shot. And then the last wish, he says, you know what? I don't want this wish. And the devil says, you have to ask for the last wish. And then he asks for Allison to be happy. And so the whole deal is off and the devil doesn't get his soul. The reason why I bring this story up is because this is a person who has been granted a wish, like a genie, like a magic, okay? And once things are the way he asked, they don't look the way he thought they were going to look. And that's what reality does. You want a mansion? Guess what? When you have a mansion, you have to clean it up and you have to fix the sprinkler system, and then you have to, somebody has to come and clean the pool, and then the gate is broken, and then you have 7 air conditioning units, and then you have to hire someone to clean the damn house, and goes on and on. And that's real. That's real. You want to be married to a movie star? Well, he's going to be traveling. He's going to probably be, all women are going to throw themselves at him because he's so handsome. So anyways, those are some of the hidden sides of reality that people sometimes don't think about. And so this is important, because if we stop imagining things and we see reality for what it is, we will enjoy it more. And here is, so remember my thing, the happiness books are written by therapists, neuroscientists, and religious leaders. And I'm not any of those, but my thing is words, language, storytelling, and literature. And through my approach, I'm telling you that your happiness has to do with the stories that you tell yourself, the words that you use, the stories you consume, the books you read, the songs you hear. And so it's important to understand storytelling. And I want to share with you, there was a book published in 1949. It's called The Hero's Journey. And it was The Hero with 1,000 Faces, I'm sorry. And The Hero's Journey is a theory that came out of that. And the author of that book is Joseph Campbell. He was unknown for years, and the person who made him famous was George Lucas, because George Lucas admitted that Star Wars is based on the hero's journey. And so I'm going to show you this graphic briefly, and you can find it in the internet if you look for it, if you look for the hero's journey. But this is it. Okay, so the hero's journey starts up here, and this is the known world, and this is the unknown world, okay? And so the hero's journey starts here, and then there's a mentor, and then there is crossing the threshold. This red line is a threshold. So this is the known world, and the hero goes on a journey. And then he faces trials and failure, but there's a helper, and then there's growth and new skills. And then at the bottom of this is death or rebirth, but it doesn't have to be physical death, and it is change right there. Okay, after change there's a revelation. After that there's the changes implemented, and then there is atonement, forgiveness for others and for ourselves, and then we cross the threshold again and we're back transformed. The reason why this arc of change is so important, and the reason why it's present in every single story, and that is what Joseph Campbell researched. I forgot to tell you that The Hero with 1,000 Faces was a very long study and research that he did in all sorts of tribes and clans all over the world. And he found that there's a monomyth, and the monomyth is the arc of change. And this is the story, the story of the hero and his journey. And so the reason why we're so attracted to the hero's journey and to the arc of change is that every single day we wake up and we face transformation. It can be small on some days and it can be big on some days. And sometimes in our lives, there's more trials, and sometimes in our lives, there's more gifts. But we face this arc of change constantly. And if we go into this theory a little bit more into depth, we will realize that the angle of this theory towards self-development, which is what we're working on right here, is that it starts in separation or departure. You depart the known world, the comfort, and you become separated from your parents, from your country, from your friends, etc. And then you go into the unknown, and that's the journey. And in the journey, it's the initiation or the period of transformation. And that's all of this part is a transformation. And that's where it's all at. That's where it all happens. And in the end, there's the return. The person or the hero comes back changed. And so in the academic world, this could be called the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And but in the known world, there's safety, and the unknown world, there's growth. In the known world, there's dependence, and in the unknown world, there's independence. In the known world, there is regression or stagnant. People stay where they are. They don't progress. And in the unknown world, there's progression, and there's immaturity or maturity. And so that is the period of transformation. That's how transformation happens. And if we look at this into more depth, there's 10 steps. And it's, like I said, first, the ordinary world, the known world. Then there's a call to adventure. And then when you cross the threshold, it's the point of no return. After that, there's the trials, the friends and foes. And we have to know who to trust, who's going to sabotage our journey, our project, our goal. Then there's a magical mentor. It can be a wizard, a fairy godmother, or just a teacher or a friend. And then there's the dragons, there's the cave, there's the forest, there's the darkness, there's the shadow. Then there's a moment of despair where it's like, oh my God, this is so hard, I can't do it. And then that's the call for our inner strength, our inner power. For those who are religious, that's when we have our moment, our God moment. And for those of you who are not religious, that is when we find our own inner strength, our divine nature. Then the ultimate treasure in any fairy tale, in any story, the ultimate treasure is the transformation. That is the goal. That is the real gift. And the internal change, that is the reward of the journey. And then there's a homeward bound, and we come back, we return to the known world, change, and then there's the rebirth cycle is full, and the champion comes home changed. So that's in detail. And the other little story that has to do with this is, or the other stages that have to do with this, are the 5 stages of grief that were presented to us by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And the 5 stages of grief are first anger. I will compare this to the pandemic, which is first anger. First denial. Oh, this is not happening. Yeah, they made it up. It's made up. Then anger. People started dying, and we wanted to blame someone. Do we blame the Russians or the Chinese or the president, or who do we blame? And then the third is bargaining. It's like, yes, I'll put on my mask, but please let me go see my friends. I want to go outside and meet people. Then there's the depression, when people are sad and they feel the sadness of losing the world as we knew it. And then there's finally acceptance, which is, yes, we'll go out into the world with our masks on, and we'll figure out a way to continue. And but good news. So this book was written by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. And David Kessler is still alive, and he wrote a book in 2019, and it's called The 6th Stage of Grief. And the 6th stage of grief is finding a purpose or meaning. So when we face a challenge, when we have an obstacle, at the end of those 5 stages, the final stage is to give that experience a meaning, to tell ourselves a story about why we had to live that. Instead of why, we also can ask, what was this for? What was the purpose of this? And the last little information I want to share with you has to do with the levels of consciousness. And they are in this book that I forgot to put out, but I have it right here. Okay, so these are the stages. I'm going to read them out loud, but you can also look them up in the internet. This book is called Power versus Force by David Hawkins. And these are the stages of levels of consciousness. This is what real happiness looks like. And I'm going to walk you through briefly through each one. Like I told you, you can look this up in the internet and you will find it. David Hawkins, that's his name. Levels of consciousness, map of consciousness. The lowest level, and he talks about vibrational frequencies. And so the lowest vibrational frequency is shame at 20. Above shame, guilt at 30. So it's better guilt because at least like I'm responsible. Then above guilt is apathy. It's I don't care. That's at 50. Then there's grief, 75. Fear at 100. Desire at 125. Anger at 150. Pride at 175. Courage at 200. All this is the section of inaction, where we're stuck. We have not even transcended our own selves. And then we pass to the evolved side of this scale. And it starts at neutrality. Neutrality really means if you say, I'm wonderful, I say, okay. And if you say I'm horrible, I say, okay. It's not that I don't care, it's that it doesn't affect me because my ego has been tamed. Above that is willingness, the power to be proactive. Acceptance at 350, reason at 400, love at 500, Joy at 540, and above joy it's peace. And the highest level is enlightenment, and that's at 1000. And so the people that are enlightened change the world because their level of consciousness is so high that when they come into this dimension, they just transform the world. And that's Jesus Christ, Siddhartha Gautama, or Muhammad, or whoever you think. But anyway, so this is illusion, first illusion, then delusion. Thank you for your attention. Bye.